President of Iceland, Bishop of Iceland, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen. I must admit, I was very humbled when I was contacted by the organizer of this important event to give an address to this highly distinguished audience. I instantly said yes. Then I paused and thought, what can I bring to the table? What can the foreign minister of a small democracy in the middle of North Atlantic tell such a qualified gathering of leaders of mind and spirit? After some reflection, I realized that I, in the same spirit as you, see myself and my country as an agent of change and an agent for change. No matter how small or how large, we all bear the same responsibilities: to drive and to push for our full potentials in the spiritual and physical sense of the word. We are judged by our action, and by the same token, our inactions speak volumes. Iceland, in spite of its size, has a platform and a voice, and we Icelanders see ourselves as change agents. And we use our voice and our platform to share our experience and future goals for others to learn from. This is what I want to tell you today. And by doing so, I want to focus on three distinct areas: peace, human rights and gender equality, and lastly, economic freedom. First, let me discuss briefly peace, stability, and universal respect for one another. Peace is a multi-layered fabric. It is rich in colors, and it's only as strong as the effort that are put into weaving it. If we want the fabric to last in the turbulent winds of world politics, it needs broad ownerships from various segments of society: religion, academia, civil society, media, and not at least citizens. The spirit of the Humanity Forums is certainly a reflection of this thinking, and speaking as the foreign minister of a small state that has for a long time been a strong advocate for democracy, human rights, and the rule of law, I am genuinely inspired by your contribution in strengthening and understanding of these universal goals. Compassion, respect, and solidarity may not be commonly discussed in international politics. They should. One of the many challenges we face is to make sure that such core values never stop leading our action on the international arena and home. In a world of constant struggle between different interests, a world where inequality and a conflict is a sad fact for too many lives, it is essential that we do not lose sight of the values which our societies are based on: respect for diversity, human rights, and individual freedoms, representing charity, harmony, and awareness. Good governance requires sound laws based on and protecting human rights. Rights without the machinery to enforce them have very little value. Laws that are not grounded in human rights will never in the long run enjoy the support of the people. Laws divorced from human rights are more likely to foster injustice and derailing societies from within. Poor governance threatens peace and security within a country, and it destabilizes whole regions. So while we bear a responsibility to our own people to govern well, we also bear a responsibility to the global community. Each nation is sovereign indeed, but none of us is isolated from the world and world events. I think all of us agree on that inclusion is the key in this respect. But this begs the question, how do we assure that international efforts to build peace are both meaningful and lasting? This is a complex question, and there is no short answer. This leads me to my next points. the build lasting peace and stability, we need to guarantee respect for basic human rights, and more specifically, we need to ensure gender equality. This is an area where Iceland can contribute greatly to the world. Iceland has been lucky enough to be free of conflicts. That, however, does not mean we do not have a role to play in advancing peace and common prosperity. We do that in part by remaining a voice for gender equality and empowerment of women and girls. The challenge is not only to maintain the strong emphasis that Iceland and our Nordic friends places on gender, but rather to push for new and innovative ways to support and further advance the work that is already underway. Equality is an essential part of sustainable development, clean economic growth, social justice, sustainable peace, and security. Only through equality can a society in general be deemed successful. This brings me to my third and final point. To realize the full potentials of both individuals and societies at large, we need freedom. Freedom to act and freedom to grow. Only a century ago, Iceland was the poorest nation of Western Europe. Today, we are among the wealthiest and most forward-looking nations on the planet. The key to this success is very simple. It is trade. Nature has given us riches, and we have been fortunate enough to decide how to share those riches with the outside world. We have been able to trade in a free and fair way and taking care not to upset our delicate balance with nature. But free trade is not something we can take for granted. Far from it. In 1986, at the height of the Cold War, US President Reagan made a radio address to the nation where he said that the economists have varied opinions as there were many. But one thing they agree on, he said. They agree that free and fair trade brings growth and opportunity and creates jobs. And they all warn that high trade barriers, what is often called protectionism, undermines economic growth and destroys jobs. I don't call it protectionism, I call it destructionism. These words are as true today as they were 3 decades ago or 3 centuries ago. We are at a certain crossroads and global free trade is at risk. We are seeing a trend towards growing populism, and these forces wrongly blame free trade for depressing wages, losing jobs, and threatening homegrown businesses. In many cases, free trade has become a substitute for exploiting the little guy and the systematic indifference of the political elite. International trade is, however, an integral part of international politics, but regrettably, it is a factor that is often overlooked. Trade is the bedrock of our relations with neighbors and those further afield. The simple truth is that free trade brings better relations, stability, and prosperity to the international community. This brings me back to my initial points. If the very essence of freedom is questioned by political, religious, and spiritual elites, it will only hit societies back with a cold storm. And it will hit those in our societies that needs growth and prosperity the most. Iceland, with its platform and its voice, will continue to champion freedom. Dear friends, it has been an honor to address you here today on this important event. I know that the combined wisdom and innovative powers assembled in this room will help weave a stronger and a more robust fabric of freedom, peace, compassion, and understanding. These are the values that make our communities sought after and a model. They are the fabric of a better, safe world. By bringing together leaders and visionaries, the Spirit of Humanity Forum will strengthen our resolve to honor these values. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking a moment to talk with us. In the forum, you talked about Reykjavik being a special place, a place of civil rights, of human rights, of gender equality, and Reykjavik being a capital of peace. How can a small city in the middle of the North Atlantic and the Arctic Ocean push out this idea of peacefulness? How do you do that?
Well, we try to use our voice, both at home and on the international stage, to preserve and just to, should we try again?
Yeah, sure. How does Iceland, which is a small country, and Reykjavik is a small city in the middle of the Arctic Ocean and the North Atlantic, push out this idea of peacefulness? How does a small place do this?
Well, it's twofold. First of all, we have to do our best at home, because everyone matters, and if we do not do things properly, then it's not very convincing when I go to the second path, is that we have a voice on the international forum, and we try to use that voice for representing the values we all agree that we should cherish. So this twofold. Of course, you always have to start at home, and we are far from perfect. We are trying our best, and I think we have something to teach, because we have been quite successful in many ways.
It was said that Iceland is the most peaceful country on earth, and how have you been able to achieve that?
Of course, it helps to be in the middle of the Atlantic. We are fortunate that we do not have, some have borders which have caused all kinds of wars and bad things through the years, decades and centuries. But also that I think it's very strong with the Icelandic people, that we are non-military, have always been that. We want to stay on that, even though we are perfectly aware that we have to stand united as, for example, a NATO member, because we have to, those countries that value freedom, human rights, rule of law, we need to, it's not, if you look at history, it's not, and even at the, as it is today, then this is still a minority thing when you look at humanity. So we are trying to use our voice, use our influence, because every nation has a voice to preserve and grow these values.
When you say that peace begins at home, what do you actually mean by that? Does it mean every individual practices some kind of peaceful endeavor and tries to feel part of a greater whole and part of a nation that is at peace?
Well, I think that everything starts with the individual. If you're going to change the world, then you have to start with yourself. I think no one who would say harassing people or doesn't show the beauty and diversity of mankind, he is not very capable of doing anything on the big stage, if you know what I mean.
Right.
So we have to start with ourselves, we have to start at home, and then we have to teach others if we possibly can.
Now, your police do not wear arms, correct? And you have no standing army, correct? So you have no fear that there's going to be violence brought upon you like it is in so many other parts of the world?
That's something that could happen. I mean, it's not like that. We want it to be that way forever. We don't want to see our good police force need to use or have arms when they're doing their job. I hope it will stay that way. But of course, we have to be careful. All kinds of threats, as you know, unfortunately. But this is something the Iceland would like to have for not only for now, but for the future. But we are aware, of course, that there are dangers, there are threats, and we cannot put the blind eye on those things.
When we came into the airport, there were flights from everywhere. We came in at rush hour. There must have been 20 airplanes on the ground. So there are people coming in from all different parts of the world. Is that a threat to Iceland? Because you have been so isolated in the past.
No, not at all. I think that Icelanders in general, we have one of the highest percentage of people who live abroad. And I think it's good that we go and learn from other nations and come back with ideas and the values we are preserving. We, of course, we were not who started with those values, but we have preserved it, I think, quite well. One other thing is that we are open, and we have to be open. And the more guests we get, the better. You can always learn from people from other places. And I think the mix and when you get this all together, I think usually something good comes out of it.
Okay. This is the third Spirit of Humanity that you've had here in Reykjavik. Why is this important that people converge here in Reykjavik? I mean, it could be held anywhere, but why here?
Well, we are very proud to have you. And we hope that you will be here as much as possible. I think the message you're giving is a very positive one, a very good one. And so we are just honored that you have decided to be in Reykjavik, and I hope we will see you as much as possible in the near future.
And just the message of peace, how do you push that out, being a country that's so far away from North America, from Europe, from China? How do you, because you said, you know, you're part of the international community and you have a stage that you can present ideas from. How do you push those ideas out to other people?
One is trying to lead by an example. Even though we're small, many people or nations look to us because we are successful when it comes to human rights, for example, gender equality. And that's something we are showing it can be done. And also that when we have the opportunity to speak to other leaders or speak to leaders around the world, then we can talk about our own experience and encourage people to do better where it's necessary.